Hello and welcome to this video all about food and meals for weight loss. I'm not going to be talking specifically about keto versus low carb versus paleo versus anything else at all. Literally just about the food and the meals and what we can do to help ourselves lose weight. So I hope you enjoy. My name is Mark and I'm here to help you live a better, healthier life. My goal is to help as many people as I can get into shape and improve their quality of life. Now, if this is your first time here and you want to learn more about practical and effective ways to improve your health, fitness and overall wellness, or if you're just interested in expanding your knowledge about fitness and nutrition, start now by hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And now, without further ado, let's jump right in. So as I said in the introduction, we're not going to talk about specific diets here in terms of, keto versus paleo versus anything else. What I wanted to talk about is foods in general and meal ideas that you can make changes to that will help you with your weight loss. And forgive me if I'm a little bit stationary during this, because I still have got a trapped nerve in my neck, but at least I can sit here for a little bit longer than the last video, so please bear with me. So the first thing for me is there are no magic foods. There are no magic things that if you eat them, you're going to suddenly lose weight overnight. A lot of things you see online, and I've tried some of them in the past, you see this, drink this and you'll lose weight overnight. The simple fact is, there is no magic bullet. Just as you've eaten too much, I've eaten too much to get to the weight I am, the simple fact is that we need to adjust the way we live and actually reduce the calories we're taking in and eat better and healthier if we want to lose weight. Now, there are some ways to make it easier for you. If you're feeling full and satiated, then you're less likely to graze and snack throughout the day. So there are things we can change that will make our lives a hell of a lot easier. And I've really found that over the last probably year, maybe two, that there are certain swaps we can make that will leave you feeling fuller for longer and therefore less likely to graze. And then if you're anything like me, it's just the habit of grazing. You're grazing because it's there, not because you're actually hungry at the time. So let's start off with, there's no magic bullet. If you can stay full for longer by making some changes to your food and your meals, then that will actually help control your appetite and stop you grazing through need. And then we just need to work on grazing through, emotional eating and all the rest of it, which is a conscious thing. So let's dig in and start with the specifics. Okay, so number one, let's talk about highly satiating foods. Now, what do we mean by satiating? It means that if you eat them calorie for calorie, it actually will keep you fuller and less hungry, suppress your appetite for longer. There's been various studies in terms of what food can help versus what food you burn through. But the general rule of thumb is, the less processed it is, the longer it will keep you feeling satiated. So, over white pasta, wholemeal pasta is better. Wild rice and brown rice will keep you feeling full and satiated for longer than white rice. That's the general rule of thumb. So let's talk some specifics, if you like. Little things like boiled and baked potatoes will keep you feeling fuller, even if they're the same calories in terms of portion, will keep you feeling fuller for longer than white rice or normal white pasta. So think about, and all the way through this, I want us to be thinking about what we can swap to actually make ourselves feel fuller for longer and more satiated as we go through. So think about your breakfast. Is it a simple case of you're having cereal for breakfast because it's convenient and everything else? If we can swap some of that for oats, for example, whether it's porridge, overnight oats, whatever you want to do with it, calorie for calorie, that porridge will keep you feeling fuller and better and suppress your appetite more for longer than a bowl of cereal. And the simple fact of that is that it takes our body a bit longer to digest it, it takes our body a bit longer to use that energy source, whereas actually if you have a bowl of cereal, one of the problems is gram for gram it's going to be much more in terms of processed carbohydrates and everything else, which means that you'll eat it and the chances are a little while later you'll probably want to eat it again. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid that hunger that is going to drive us to have extra meals or extra grazing. So think about the meals you eat, the type of food you eat. Can we swap out white rice for brown rice, white pasta for brown rice? Can we swap out some of those things for baked and boiled potatoes? I'm being very specific there, baked and boiled. Obviously, if you put it into a frying pan and have chips, then you're going to be having all of those oils and everything else. So try and keep it as little processed and without the oils and things to cook with. And we'll talk a bit more about that in terms of some meal ideas for you later. But it's that highly satiating food. So think about little to no processing. Think about those swaps we can make in terms of swap your cereal for some oats, be it porridge or be it overnight oats, and there are thousands of recipes online that you can have a look at that will give you the calories and the macros involved. But the general idea is if we can swap those out and feel fuller for longer, it means you're less likely to snack and graze. So that is highly satiating foods. Next, I wanted to talk about full stomach. It is one of those things that for most people, if they don't have a medical condition, the more expanded your stomach becomes, the more full you feel, therefore the less appetite you have because you are full. Now, I know I've talked about volume eating quite a lot, but I've never really talked about the specifics other than veg is good for filling you up without that many calories, and that's still true. But the simple fact is that the fuller you are, the less hungry you'll be, and therefore the less likely you are to have extra meals, snacks and graze throughout the day. But what does that really mean in terms of what we eat and what changes we can make to our food and our meals? So a couple of little things to think about is 4 rice cakes. So 4 of those rice cakes you buy in the shops, which is quite a stack. It's 4 rice cakes is the best part of 1.5 inches high, with a 3-inch diameter. They're quite big. 4 of those is the same equivalent in terms of calories to 1 slice of white bread, roughly. But 4 rice cakes is a lot more eating, so your body feels like you're eating more because you are literally chewing more, swallowing more, and it has a bigger volume which is going to fill up that space in your stomach, making you feel fuller and suppressing your appetite because you're full. It's things like, what snacks are you going to go for? So some very lightly seasoned popcorn has far more volume to it, calorie for calorie, than packets of chips or crisps, depending on where in the world you are. So have a think about those snacks, have a think about those high volume foods, not just filling your plate with vegetables. Okay, so that is high volume as well. But we're not specifically here looking at the meal itself, but those snacks you have during the day while you're watching a movie in the evening. And please don't do what I did at the very start of this, which is, and I know it's totally wrong, I know it's wrong, but in my head, popcorn is, high volume and good for you. And it's not much of a stretch to go from normal popcorn, or slightly salted popcorn to toffee popcorn, which of course has a stack of calories and sugars and everything else in, which negates the point of having lightly seasoned popcorn as a snack. So please bear that in mind. Don't do what I did, because I seem to always justify to eating crud as we go through. So keep thinking to yourself, full stomach, so not just at meals where you're going to have more veg than you did before, but also in those snacks you have a slice of toast with a lashing of butter, or 4 of the sort of lightly flavoured rice cakes. Which one has the more volume? Which one's going to leave you feeling fuller for longer? And there are lots of alternatives out there. Also think about, your fruits and your potatoes and your popcorn, like I said, because those things, as long as you're eating the whole fruit and not just drinking fruit juice, with the fibre and everything else, it's the act of eating, the time it takes and the volume it gives you for the calories. So have a think about that in terms of your meals, but also your snacks as well. A full stomach equals less hungry, which is good when you're trying to lose weight. So, full stomach. Next, I wanted to talk about protein, and this doesn't matter whether it's getting it from vegetables, whether you're a vegetarian and vegan, or meat. The principle is still the same. Increasing your protein intake per meal from 15 to 30% will actually leave you feeling less hungry, more full for longer than just having carbs and vegetables and everything else. Now, I'm certainly not somebody who preaches eating nothing but meat, because there are lots of horror stories and things around from doing a purely meat diet for very long. But certainly increasing it from 15%, which is about normal, to 30% will leave you feeling fuller and less hungry for longer. It's also thermogenic in terms of food. Now, what I mean by that, thermogenic, is that it takes your body more energy to use the food. So something that's really bad for you is sugars. It doesn't take the body very much energy to use that energy, so it's really kind of cheap and easy for the body to do it. Whereas actually with protein, the body needs to work a bit harder. It needs to actually burn some calories to get the calories out. So not only does it leave you feeling full and less hungry, but it also makes your body work harder to get the energy from the protein. So it's a kind of double win. Now, there's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of people, looking at different amounts of protein, per kilogram per pound. But generally speaking, you're looking at somewhere between 1.6 and 2.2 grams per kilogram. Now, for my weight, that's around 62 grams per meal if I was having 4 meals. So that's quite a lot of protein in terms of eating it. But it also has a few other effects there, which is that if you are cutting back on food and your calories, eating the protein helps maintain your muscles that you've got. What you don't want to be doing is starving yourself, and your body will get to a point where it'll actually use up its own muscles rather than actually taking energy from food sources. So certainly don't go to that extreme. But 64 grams of protein 4 times a day, 62 grams of protein 4 times per day is a lot of protein. It will leave you feeling full. Now, whether you get it from pulses and beans, whether you get it from meat, that is up to you. Obviously, if you are going for the meat option, your lean meats are better than your fatty meats. So your fishes and your chickens, turkey, those are all much better than having some marbled, ribeye steak all the time. I'm not saying don't have a steak, and I do every few weeks, but try and keep it to leaner meats, your turkeys, your chickens and your fishes, because those not only have, in the case of fish, has oils and other nutrients that are good for you in terms of keeping you healthy, but they're also leaner in terms of the protein versus fat that's in the food. So what does 60-ish grams of protein look like? Well, that's 2 big protein shakes. That is, about 3 chicken breasts throughout the day. It's quite a lot, but it's only a guide. Obviously, do it for yourself in terms of those numbers. So like I said, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram. You can work it out and see how you feel on it. But it is a simple case of it's thermogenic, it's healthy, it keeps your muscles going even when you are reducing your calories. It will leave you feeling full for longer. And this is the aim of the game in terms of these meals and foods as we go through. So that for me is the kind of last one I wanted to talk about in terms of specifics. What I want to talk about next is the actual meals and some meal ideas in terms of breakfasts and dinners and everything else, and a little bit about cooking them. As always, if you're enjoying this video, please do hit the like button and leave a comment, and we'll move on to the meals and the cooking ideas for you. Okay then, so meals. Whether you're doing intermittent fasting or whether you're having 4 meals a day, however you do it, I'm not talking about that today because each person will have a way that works for them. What I'm talking here about is general principles of meals while you're trying to lose weight. So we've talked about prioritizing highly satiating foods. We've talked about the higher volume both on the plate in terms of veg, but also in terms of your snacks. And one of the things that I didn't mention about protein is try and consume a source of protein with every meal you have, because that will leave you feeling fuller for longer. So all those things aside, let's talk about some of those changes you can make. Now, whether you're somebody who uses protein powder or whether you want to keep it to eggs or other sources, there are lots of ways to add in some protein quite easily these days without having to have lots of vegetables or meat products depending on which way you sit. Things like oats in the morning, it's very easy to add some protein powder to oats and then some fruit on top in terms of that volume and taste and everything else. So things like oats with some protein powder and strawberries is a very quick and efficient way to actually start your day and leave you feeling fuller for as long as we can, which again, the aim of this is to stop you doing what I do, which is grazing, not particularly because we're hungry, but because it's just there. The hunger just makes the grazing worse. So if you can remove the hunger, then you just got to work on bad habits and improving your lifestyle to stop you snacking throughout the day. So oats and protein powder, a great way of actually increasing your protein intake. It's also a great way of keeping you feeling full for longer than a bowl of cereal in the morning. Think about your lunch. Now, obviously, well not obviously, quite a lot of people are pushed for time at lunch. So try and think of things that you can actually have relatively quickly. Fish doesn't take very long to cook. You can cook it, independently and before, but you can also meal prep. So one of the things that I try and do, I don't often succeed, but I try and do, is cook batches of vegetables and potatoes so that I can have a meat source, whether it's chicken or whatever else, with some vegetables, and all I'm really doing at lunchtime is heating it up. One of the things in terms of cooking tips I'm going to talk about is parchment chicken, so hold on for that, because that makes lunchtime meal prep fantastic, and I'll talk about that in a second. Dinner is much the same in terms of a lean protein with vegetables. Try and fill your plate up with vegetables, but don't be afraid to have a potato, baked potato, boiled potato, whatever. There's also nothing wrong with rice, absolutely nothing wrong with rice, but try and go for a wild rice or brown rice rather than the overly processed white rice that we get mostly in the UK. That will just leave you feeling fuller for longer, which is just the idea there. So in terms of your meals, whatever the meal plan is you're on in terms of whether it's intermittent fasting or just 3 times a day or 4 times a day, just think about what you're doing and try and always incorporate the protein. Try always to incorporate some sort of volume there, and above all, try and avoid those overly processed foods, in your meal planning, because that will leave you feeling full for longer, which again is all about reducing that temptation to snack and the need to snack because you're actually still hungry, or you're hungry 20 minutes after you've had your bowl of cereal. So next we're going to talk about meal prep and some meal prep ideas. Okay, so let's talk about cooking ideas and meal prep ideas and things that might be able to help you. So one of the easiest things to stop doing that is a really healthy lifestyle to do is don't use or reduce the amount of oil you use in your cooking and preparation. Now that includes ghee and everything else. Anything that is buttery, oily is calories that you can quite easily do without. Rather than lightly frying some chicken in a pan, bake it, put it in the oven, grill it, whatever works for you. The idea is you're trying to eat cleanly, and what I mean by that is no hidden sugars and sauces and everything else thrown in. You only put in things that you actually know are there. For example, tomato puree. How much sugar is in tomato puree? I used to use it in everything. I now very rarely use it because it's just a hidden sugar and a hidden calorie count that I didn't know about, I didn't think about. So I try and reduce that. In fact, I use next to none of it these days. But oil is the same. How many times do you glug that oil into a pan before you cook something? Do you really need that? I know in the UK we have things called something called fry light, which is kind of like a 1 calorie per spray, I think it is. And you can spray your pan with that, use about 4 or 5 calories, and actually cook your food, and it kind of tastes like olive oil, but 5 or 6 sprays versus 200 calories for a tablespoon, it's far healthier. So try and cook clean as well as eating clean in terms of the food you're doing. Grill and bake things if you can. One of the things that I always used to do is lots of stir fries because I was being healthy. I was having lots of vegetables, but I'd put in several tablespoons of olive oil to then cook the chicken, to then cook all the veg and everything else. But then we came across the idea, I can't remember where we came across, I think it was a friend who told us about parchment paper, that paper you can put in the oven. And if you put a portion of chicken into a parchment paper parcel, that's a tongue twister, with some herbs and spices, and put it into the oven and bake it, what really happens is the juices and liquid kind of steams the chicken while it's in the oven, so it maintains its softness and it's a really juicy meat when it comes out, but it also absorbs whatever flavours you're putting in there. So whether it's Indian spices or Cajun spices, or a little bit of chili, whatever it is you put into that parchment paper with it, and you can marinate the chicken and everything else beforehand, or you can just sprinkle some powder over it, but it really does give a quite intense flavour to the chicken. It keeps it really soft and juicy, and you can do it in batches. So when I was talking about at lunchtime, having some potatoes and vegetables that's kind of pre-prepared, well, also with the chicken, if you've already cooked it in a batch, so we tend to cook probably 10 or so chicken breasts at the weekend in the parchment paper with different flavours. We put those in the fridge to keep them fresh and not spoiling, but then it means that at dinner time, when you're doing a vegetable stir fry, really it only takes a few minutes because all you're doing is cooking the vegetables and then throwing in the chicken at the last minute, and off you go. At lunchtime, again, you could pull out a chicken breast, chop it up and have it in a salad or with your veg, whatever you fancy doing. But the simple act of doing that once at the weekend, and yes, okay, if you're doing 2 or 3 different flavours of parchment, it takes you 5 minutes to prepare each one, put it in the oven and leave it there for an hour. But that saves you doing that hour and a bit every single day, to try and get your clean protein for your meals for that week. So have a think about what you can do to reduce the amount of sort of fats and oils you're using for your cooking. Things like fry light, just reducing the amount of oil you're using, or ghee or butter or whatever else, and try and bake and grill things more than shallow or deep fry. All those changes are things that you can do quite easily without noticing a difference in the taste. At first, I confess, I turned my nose up at reducing the oil, because obviously it would taste, not as good as it used to. I was really bad at, pouring in the oil when the wife went out the kitchen. Guilty. You don't get to my weight without being guilty of these things, and absolutely guilty. But using things like fry light, or just using less to no oil, is something that actually makes very little difference to the taste, but it does make a massive difference to the calories, those hidden calories that you're having over and above the food. So if you've weighed out and measured your 600 calories of protein and vegetables, and then you suddenly cook it in 2 or 3 tablespoons of olive oil, you've effectively doubled the calories of that meal. Think about that. Your 600 calorie meal can quickly become 1200 calories just by throwing in 3 tablespoons of oil. That's quite a lot of oil for that amount, but you get the idea. And also think about your proteins and things that you can prepare in advance, as well as your vegetables. If you've got access to a fridge and some Tupperware, I'm not saying I'm not the sort of person who preps a whole week's worth of meals, but I probably do prep 3 or 4 lunches and 3 or 4 dinners at the weekend, because it just saves me time during the week. So have a think about that. And the very last one, which is a constant, is drink more water. It's that simple. Water is essential to losing weight. One of the things that can stop people from actually losing weight is by not drinking enough water to let your body go through that cycle of breaking up the fat. The simple fact, and I did a video on it a while ago, the simple fact is that fat being used by the body breaks down to carbon dioxide, but it can't happen unless you provide the water to allow that to happen. So drink lots of water. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.